Graduates, I know, I was not your first choice. But hey, Meghan Markle had something else to do today, all right? Let me begin with the bad news. You think that all of your exams are behind you now, but I'm about to administer just one more before you leave campus. The good news is that there'll be no grading for this exam. You can answer to yourself, and there'll only be 4 questions. Here we go. First, the House of Representatives has how many voting members? Second, what do we call the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution? Third, how many justices comprise the Supreme Court of the United States? And fourth, on what day was the Declaration of Independence adopted? The answers are 435 members of the House of Representatives. We call the first 10 amendments to the Constitution the Bill of Rights. There are 9 Supreme Court justices, and the Declaration of Independence was adopted on July 4, 1776. For extra credit, in what year was the Constitution written? The answer to that would be 1787. Show of hands and be honest, how many, including parents, had all 5 correct? Each of these is a question contained on the naturalization test, that which must be passed along with a rudimentary English exam in order for someone to become a naturalized citizen of the United States. In 2016, the most recent year for which data is available, approximately 750,000 immigrants became official citizens of the United States this way. Most of them had spent at least 5 years living in the U.S. and were at least 18 years of age. They were orally asked up to 10 questions each and needed to answer at least 6 correctly. Now, I know that most of you bypassed that process because your citizenship was conferred by your birth in the United States. But ask yourself, if your citizenship were dependent upon your knowledge of our government, would you make it? If not, you've plenty of company. By a variety of objective measures, our knowledge of our government, our participation in our communities is on the decline. And given our polarized political environment, that couldn't come at a worse time. Almost 50% of Americans don't know that a 5-4 decision from the Supreme Court of the United States holds the same authority and value as a 9-0 decision. Only 1/4 of Americans can name all 3 branches of government, and less than 1 in 4 young people are considered proficient in civic knowledge. Here's another measure of our national lack of participation. We just lived through one of the most electrifying elections of the modern era. Say what you will about the major candidates, but dull it was not. And yet 102 million eligible Americans sat it out. Perhaps that's explained by the fact that 42% of Americans don't think their engagement can influence the government very much. And what a shame that is. In a country where our deliberative process does not involve guns or knives, our representation is not dependent upon a bloodline, nor who has the most feared army. We settle our scores when the curtain is closed on a ballot box, at least when people show up to vote. I'm afraid that many of those to whom citizenship was conferred by birth lack an appreciation for what makes our nation great in this regard. And it's a conclusion I reached in part after I delivered another speech 12 years ago. It was at a naturalization ceremony. And that day I stood before 54 individuals from 27 different nations, each taking an oath in a federal courtroom that was paneled in California redwood. I told them that as a boy growing up in the Philadelphia suburbs, in Doylestown, as a matter of fact, I shared the dream of many other children to hold the All-American position, which of course meant pitching for the Phillies, but that didn't come to pass. And yet, somehow, I ended up with the quintessential All-American job. I'm a talk show host. And not only do I offer my opinions on radio, I get to do so on television and in print as well. I'm the modern equivalent of those who stood on a soapbox in Philadelphia roughly 250 years ago. What makes mine the All-American job is my ability to speak my mind on matters of public concern without any fear of recrimination. It's a right guaranteed to all of us in the First Amendment to the Constitution, and I draw significance from the fact that it is the very First Amendment to the Constitution, which reads that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of our grievances. It's that protection which gave me the ability this week on radio to opine to a national audience about subjects like sports betting, the location of our embassy in Israel, the Iranian nuclear agreement, eminent domain, the Mueller investigation, and the medicinal value of medical marijuana. It's the underpinning of a recent commentary I delivered on television, where I argued that Kanye West and Shania Twain both have the right to be supportive of the president, or not. It's what enabled a newspaper column that I published last Sunday in which I supported the work of Wanksy, a British road artist who spray paints what he describes as a big willy around potholes so as to shame local government officials into fixing them. That's how debate in this country is held, in the open, via the airwaves, and amongst all who choose to participate. And even though I get paid to offer my views are worth no more than any of your views, nor any more than the views of those who are naturalized citizens. It's a great framework for redress of our grievances, but only when it's utilized. In anticipation of today, I've spent some time acquainting myself with your curriculum. I was impressed to read about the Experience 360 program. That real-world experience is going to serve all of you well. And I was gratified to see that civic engagement is one component of EC 360. Now, coincidentally, just last week, I spoke in a retirement community not far from here. And in the audience was a 90-year-old gentleman named Oscar Larson, a 1952 graduate of this fine institution with a major in dairy husbandry, who then returned to serve as your registrar from 1954 through 1989. Oscar asked me what I intended to share with all of you. And when I said that I wanted to encourage good citizenship, he shocked me by saying that on his watch here at Delaware Valley, students actually received a letter grade for citizenship. Now imagine that, each of your professors weighing in not only on your academic work, but also on what kind of a citizen you are. Ask yourself, if that practice were alive today, what would your transcript reveal? I hope that I'm a good citizen. If you ask me what warrants my invitation to be your commencement speaker, I wouldn't rattle off my affiliations on radio, television, or print. Instead, I would boast of the fact that since I turned 18 in 1980 and registered to vote, I've never missed an election for which I've been eligible. Or I would tell you about how when I was 24, I ran unsuccessfully for the state legislature while I was in law school. I lost that race here locally by 419 votes. I've since located 236 of those people. I might tell you about being appointed by President George Herbert Walker Bush to a sub-cabinet level position where I was responsible for all federal housing in 5 states, or perhaps I'd share a story that you heard passing reference to about how in 2009 I conducted President Obama's first live radio interview from the White House. I'd been promised 30 minutes, one-on-one with the president, and that the interview would be telecast live on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. In anticipation of my interview, I was flooded with thousands of suggested questions from members of my radio audience. And at home, everyone had something they thought I needed to ask of the president, including the night before the interview at family dinner, when one of my young sons said, "Dad, make sure you ask President Obama about the Book of Secrets." And I said, "Okay, but you're going to have to remind me." He said, "Dad, you know, we just saw Nicolas Cage in National Treasure 2, and when a president gets elected, he gets the Resolute desk and the Book of Secrets, and the Book of Secrets explains, did we really go to the moon? Who killed JFK, and what's in Area 51? I said, "Okay, I'll try and work it in, but I don't think I'll have the opportunity." The following day, I was in the diplomatic reception room at the White House. I had planned, I thought, for every eventuality but one, and that is that the president would arrive early while I was still on a commercial break. I didn't want to burn any of my planned topics, but now I needed to make small talk with the commander-in-chief. By now, you should know where this is going. We shook hands, he sat down, and I said, "Mr. President, what's in the Book of Secrets?" To which he responded, "I'd tell you, but I'd have to kill you." We then did the interview. I covered the landscape of subject matter. The Affordable Care Act, which had not yet been passed, the hunt for bin Laden, he'd not yet been killed, an economic program called Cash for Clunkers. I didn't embarrass myself. I didn't create any YouTube moments. I went home with my head held high. And the following day, I was eager to see what the print coverage would be like because the Associated Press had been in the room for our entire interaction. There was the headline in hundreds of newspapers across the country, "Obama Mum on Book of Secrets." And that was the sole focus of the story. My point is this: I've been fully engaged since I sat where you're sitting now. No matter your political outlook, I hope we can all agree that never in the modern era has there been such a need for civic engagement. And that's my wish for all of you today. Like your parents, like your siblings, like your friends, like the faculty, I too want you to go forth and conquer your professional goals. That you be prosperous, fall in love, raise families, be kind, but also that you be good citizens. Pay attention to public affairs. Get out of your bubble and sample a variety of news outlets. Be active in your communities, vote, volunteer, take ownership of the country, because it's your watch now. The fate of the nation is literally in your hands. Come see me in a retirement community in 30 years and tell me how you're doing. Good luck and thank you.